Good morning. Morning. Happy Sunday, everybody. It's a new week. Last week, Pastor Mike shared his inspirations on living for the sake of others based on the morning devotions that our new president, Dr. Young, has been giving. And if you haven't listened to them yet, I highly recommend just listen to one and see if it doesn't catch you and pull you in. Because I feel like they're just little truth bombs. Love bombs and truth bombs. And the whole past couple of weeks, he's been talking about the attributes of true love. And he spends a long time talking about it and going in all different angles and different examples. But the feeling I'm really left with is that is undeniably an attribute of true love. Undeniably. And then, of course, what does that mean for me? What do I do with that? So, last Friday, not this past Friday, the Friday before, I was really moved by his morning devotion. He was talking about loving your enemy as an attribute of true love. The way that he put it was that true love seeks to love even one's enemy. And I thought that was a little different than just saying loving your enemy, because saying that true love seeks to love even one's enemy means that it's proactive. It's not just in my mind, I can love anybody. Or maybe if I happen to end up in a conversation with that person, I'll try to find some way to love them. But true love seeks proactively to love even one's enemy. And so I want to talk about that a little bit today, and why is that something that I should try to do? Why does it make a difference? Why is it actually not optional? Dr. Young said that if we understand very clearly what it means to love our enemy, we will have a life-changing experience. And I think that it might sound strange or outrageous if you have never had an experience where you overcame everything inside of yourself and loved your enemy. It can just sound impossible. It can sound outrageous. However, if you are someone who has had that experience of going beyond everything to love your enemy, then this is like immediately resonates with you. Yes, this is a life-changing experience. I want to share a verse from the Bible. This is Jesus' words from Matthew chapter 5, verses 43 to 46. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be the son of your Father in heaven. He causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? If you share love with somebody that you already like and who loves you, of course, it's not bad. It is a good thing. I think we should actually make a lot of effort to appreciate and recognize and to love those who we like and who love us. But in some ways, that is a simple love. It's a simple reciprocation. But to love somebody that is not easy to love, that is deep, true love. The best way to grow your spirit, which is all of our goal, right? We don't all want to be the same person that we are right now, tomorrow, and next week, and next year, and a decade from now, and forever. We don't want to just be the way I am right now, right? We all want to grow our spirit. But the best way, the fastest way to grow our spirit is to love our enemy. Dr. Young put it, he said, "My enemy perfects my love. Therefore, I should appreciate my enemy." That is the road to the kingdom of heaven. And again, he said, what does that mean? No choice. So some people, in relationship to their enemies, and you might think of an enemy as like, oh, somebody who wants to harm me. Or maybe you think, oh, I don't have any enemies because I don't argue with anybody. Or, I don't hate any other group of people. But an enemy can be anybody that you have a reservation about when it comes to your love. Do you hesitate? Do you see somebody on the other side of the lunchroom and think, oh, I think I'll stay at this table this week? Or is there somebody at work who you just like, I will do any other job except for a group project with this person? Maybe you don't consider them your enemy. Maybe you aren't clashing all the time. But we have to recognize that we're all in relationships so that we can grow. So some people are aggressively hateful toward their enemies. We know some of these people, right? Where they'll take any opportunity to argue with somebody or to blame somebody. We know those people. But I would say that the vast majority of people in this world actually don't want to do that. Most people, we just want to avoid our enemies. It's actually much simpler because then I don't have to face that actually I have my own prejudices. I have my own concepts. And if I avoid them, then I don't have to face those things. My own negative thoughts that come up when I see them or I hear about them or I talk about them. If we just avoid them, then we don't actually have to do anything. And we don't have to change anything. We don't have to grow our hearts. We won't give anybody a reason to say that, oh, I hate this person. But avoiding our enemies is not the same thing as seeking to love our enemies. This past week, even my husband and I experienced a disconnect. I wouldn't say that we were, arguing or really against each other, but we just weren't communicating on the same level, and then we just ended up not really talking for a couple of days because it's just easier than to have to, because if I were to say something, then I would have to admit, oh, actually, I'm being a little bit petty myself. I'm being a little bit selfish myself. It's easier just to pretend everything's fine and not talk. And it's a lot easier than trying to express love despite what I might be feeling. So I really appreciate my husband because sometimes I feel like, oh, I have to be the bigger person. I have to be the one to say I'm sorry or to go express love first. But actually, if I'm really honest with myself, that's being arrogant. And Mike is often the one to speak first and to love first. And that's really what we had a conversation this morning, and I really felt, why have I been so petty? So even in these simple relationships, actually our family relationships are often where we might find our enemies. Because your family knows you better than anybody else. Your spouse knows all your weaknesses, all your little quirks. They know when you get petty. Your children know exactly when you say something you don't mean. They see it right away. And our parents invested their whole life and everything into their children, and sometimes they see us like throwing away their investment. Our family knows us better than anybody else. So while there is the opportunity to experience the most joy, the most fulfillment, the most happiness in our family, in reality, it is where a lot of people experience all of the opposite. The most frustration, the most pain, the most betrayal, the most disappointment. We all know people who have cut their parents out of their life or disowned their children. And divorce is so commonplace. So I think it's not a stretch to say that one of our biggest challenges in life is actually simply to love our family, the enemies in our family, without criticizing or blaming. Or if they criticize and blame us, to accept it with appreciation. Because this is something that Dr. Young said that I really caught, and I thought was really a unique perspective. That if somebody says something to me that I don't like, if I'm feeling indignant, or if I'm feeling like they're being irrational, if I get upset because of what somebody says to me, what does that mean? What are those emotions indicative of? If I am self-righteous, if I am indignant, if I am arrogant, if I want to blame that person for making me feel bad, these are all attributes of what we call in our faith the fallen nature. And these are not things that God gave us, but because we are descendants of the fall, we have these aspects in us, whether we like it or not, and they come out sometimes. But when they're not out in the open, when we don't experience them, we have no reason to deal with them. So actually, when I experience these emotions of frustration or indignance or self-righteousness, this is actually a wonderful opportunity for me to resolve them. And therefore, I can appreciate the person who brought those out in me. Isn't that amazing? That we can actually have appreciation for the people who help us to overcome our fallen natures. My enemy perfects my love. Another point that he made was that if your enemy is upset at you, and then you also become upset, then you're at the same level, right? This is like formation stage. This is where all boundaries and concepts are, and that's where they stay. There will always be, it's like a never-ending cycle at that level. Even if we feel like that person is the wrong, if that's the way that I respond, then there's no difference between me and that person. And I have to say, it is the worst feeling in the world when I get caught in that. I'm so upset at myself. I remember it was towards the end of my time on my missions program, and I really felt like I had done so much work on myself to take God's perspective towards people and to grow my heart and to learn how to love people who are different from me. But I remember some small thing happened, and I just had all these feelings welling up of oh, nobody appreciates me anyway, and why don't they care about what I do? And I've been working so hard to do all these good things, and I hated that feeling. It felt like hell. And then I realized that's exactly this. I feel like I'm in junior high again, because all that stuff is going on in middle school and junior high. I feel like I'm in junior high again. And junior high was hell. So yes, I feel like I'm in hell. So it's a very strong emotion in me when I start to feel this indignation and lack of love. And I hate that feeling. This is a quote from our true Father. When we love our enemy and become one in heart with them, the boundaries between us collapse. That is why God's strategy has always been to love his enemy. There can be no strategy greater than this. Another thing that he often talks about, and I didn't find a quote on it, but he often says that when we win with true love, the only way we really know that we have actually been able to successfully love our enemy is when our enemy acknowledges us. We have been certified by our enemy as being a person of true love. Just because I say, oh, I love everyone is my friend, your differences don't make a difference to me, that actually doesn't mean much. But when the people who criticize me acknowledge me, that is the certification. So this makes me think of my experience in high school, actually. Now, I was in high school with the same people I was in junior high with. We don't switch schools in rural Missouri. We were just with the same people from kindergarten through high school. So, based on my experience in junior high, I was not heading into high school with very high hopes or expectations. I struggled a lot, actually. I was a different kid with a different faith and didn't date, and I didn't have a very good sense of fashion. And those things didn't help my relationships with a lot of my peers. However, because of the struggles that I faced and questioning myself, well, are those things really more important? I was pretty happy to have New Balance shoes. And then I learned later that New Balance shoes are not cool. So are those things really important to me or not? And I did a lot of, unfortunately, I lived out in the middle of nowhere. I didn't have a lot of people to complain to or to talk to. So it was just me questioning myself, my values, and talking to God. And through that, I also began to look at my classmates. And I began to make connections between the way that they acted and the things that they said and their home life or their parents or the way that they grew up. And I actually had so much compassion for my classmates. And so I didn't worry anymore if they said anything about me. And what do you know? Nobody said anything about me anymore after that. And by the end of high school, I was very happy to graduate from high school and leave. But at the end of high school, I realized I was going to miss these people. And I think they miss me. I'm actually closer friends with most of them on Facebook now than I ever was in person. And we didn't have our 10-year high school reunion, but I really, really hope we have a 20-year high school reunion because I really want to see them again. And I think it would be a wonderful experience to get back together with them. So I can't say I've gotten the acknowledgement or certification from them, but I feel like I'm getting close, you know. But I tell you, that was such a growing experience for me to come out of my overwhelming feelings of frustration and anger towards my classmates and feeling like they don't recognize me for who I am. And you know what I'm talking about, right? Okay, good. I'm not alone. To come out of that and then to have a heart of a larger perspective, parental perspective. I grew a lot. So the question is then, how do I love my enemy? It sounds good, but just thinking it sounds good doesn't give me the strength to do it. Where does the power to love my enemy come from? And the short answer of this from Dr. Young was, above all things, you need to have a heart to love God. As much as I can love God, that is how much I can love my enemy. If I cannot love my enemy, I can't really say with wholehearted confidence that I really truly love God. Because that is who God is. That is God's strategy. I think this is why we appreciate and actually depend so much on people like Jesus and our true parents, because they lived this fully. I can share some little anecdotes of my life where I forgave people or I learned to love this person, and it was a life-transforming experience for me. However, I can't say that I am always there, just like I wasn't there this week. But we have examples of people who were, right? We know about Jesus. And Jesus demonstrated that throughout his whole life. The most notable example is, of course, when Jesus was on the cross, with every single reason in the world to blame, right? Not just because he was hurt or because he was sad. He had legitimate reasons to blame. And yet he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. But he has examples all through his life. I remember Mike gave a message probably a couple years ago about how Jesus was sharing the gospel. And his disciples said, well, we've got a nice group here. Why don't we go here? And Jesus said, no, I want to go across the sea to those people over there. And his disciple says, but why? They're Gentiles. They're not even Jews. These people would hate you. And Jesus said, no, those are the people I have to go to. It's more important for me to talk to them who might hate me than it is for me to share with you who already understand me. These are the type of examples all through Jesus' life. And our true parents as well. When I shared not too long ago about how Reverend and Mrs. Moon went to visit Kim Il-sung, who had attempted, both indirectly and directly, to kill them. But when the time came, True Father didn't say, wait, right, before we sit down, I have something to ask you. Why are you so hateful? No, the first thing he did was to just embrace him, having prepared themselves for weeks to see Kim Il-sung as their brother, not just as a symbolic brother, but actually as their brother. And when they embraced them, that is the love that came through. But this doesn't mean that they just, drilled it in their head. Okay, I have to love my enemy. I have to love my enemy. So this is what I have to do. If I have to love my enemy, then that means I have to go across the sea to talk to those people. And, I really should love my enemy. So that means I should go see Kim Il-sung. No, where did it come from? Where did the power to love come from? because these people loved God and experienced the fullness of God's love more than anybody else. Because they knew God's love as a reality in their life and loved God, then it was the natural thing to do. So for us, I think sometimes we have to practice a little bit. Sometimes it takes a little while. It's maybe not the first thing we want to do when somebody annoys us or when somebody frustrates us. But it's important to recognize that when those emotions come up in myself, these are just my fallen natures, and this is just an opportunity to resolve them. And so it might take a little while to wrestle with those. I don't think I've ever just responded with love immediately to somebody who's, accused me or said something harsh. I'm not there yet, but I do think it's important to take the time before responding to examine, where are these emotions coming from? What do I do with them? And what is God's perspective on me and this person? And with that process, little by little, practice by practice, then it becomes the natural thing to do. Dr. Young said, why can't you feel God? Or do we always feel God? Well, the problem is not with God if we're not feeling Him. But as much as we can remove our fallen nature, our hatred, our concepts of people, as much as we can remove our pride and our ego, that is how much we will feel God. So the work of addressing these emotions and releasing them allows us to experience God's love more fully. And the more that I realize that God loves me, despite all these emotions I just felt, the more compassion and love I have to give to the person who didn't give me those emotions, who sparked those emotions within me. These days, everybody's so quick to point fingers. Oh, we have problems because of this person, or that person, or this group, or that group, or this country. That is all the culture and the news and social media will tell you. It's hyper-focused on finding ways to blame someone for all the problems we have. And here's the tough thing. They might be justified. Maybe there are reasons to blame people. Just as Jesus had all of the justified reasons in the world to blame the Romans, to blame the Jews, to blame Pontius Pilate, to blame Judas. But that's not my job. My responsibility, my job, is to love first. Just like in the song, right? Judge slow, love quick. What would Jesus do? Jesus would love first. Dr. Young says, my first job is to love. What is my second job? My second job is to love. So is my third job. That is my personal responsibility. And no matter what the situation is in my family, in my community, in my state, in my country, in my world, that is also what I have power over. And that is what I can do. It is not my responsibility to be right. It is not my responsibility to prove someone else is wrong. We can only overcome by love. So, I know that this was a stressful week for many people. And as coronavirus cases are rising in Colorado, I unfortunately have to say it looks like we're also heading towards another stay-at-home order, which in that case means we'll have to not have church until we're able to have church. But that's okay, because we already know our responsibility. My responsibility is to love, to recognize when emotions come up that are not love, reconcile them. In that process, I know we will experience God, and when we experience God in our life, then it is a natural thing to give it, and we fulfill our responsibility. So that's my message for today. I thank you so much all for being here. I hope we see you next week. If not, then maybe we'll resume our phone calls to everybody and keep in touch. So please join me in prayer. Most beloved Heavenly Parent, good morning. Thank you so much for such a glorious, beautiful morning today. We're so happy that so many of us could gather here as brothers and sisters. We're sorry that some people can't make it, but I pray that we can share our love equally with them as with those who are here. And Heavenly Parent, I pray that with everything that is going on in the world and in our country, in our homes, that we can first remember what our responsibility is. And that our goal in life is not to be the same person tomorrow that I am today, but that I have the power to grow through your love, through sharing your love, Heavenly Parent. So I pray that as we go into this week, that we can all find some way to love someone who might be difficult to love. I know it's not easy, but God, you've shown us the way. You've given us the examples. And your love is just waiting. I know your love is just overflowing, and you want to fill us with that love, and you're waiting for us to take the lead, to love first. And you can't wait to share your love with us and with the people that we love, Heavenly Parent. Thank you so much. I want to offer this service this week to you. I pray this in my name, Michael Adonia Henschrick, Blessed Angel family. Amen and adieu. Thank you.